Are you winning? Are you winning at life?
Absolutely. I'm a positive person by nature. Even when things have been extremely bad in my life, I've never felt like I've been losing. It's the weirdest thing, but going through an experience where you have somebody who you feel is holding you down, you almost get to a breaking point, which I believe I did mentally. And I just started not caring about the bad things. My mom, she was in septic shock and she had 8 surgeries. She was in intensive care for weeks. Didn't expect to make it. If you can tune out the bad things in your life and you really understand how to do that, the sky's the limit for you. When you frame it, you win more days than you lose, basically. That's the optimism that I'm trying to instill in kids and what I even try to instill through my leadership. Sometimes we set these grandiose goals of this is what I want to do and I'm going to do this, but we forget about the journey there sometimes. I believe that I can be anything. I cut my own hair, for crying out loud. I'm like the ultimate DIY guy. But even small successes can get you to that big success. Once you start to develop the traits of being a leader, it doesn't matter if it's real estate or city management or a hospital or any organization. Having the traits of a good leader really does plug in very well with any industry. I have unfinished business.
All right, man. I'm going to start out with a question, and you tell me, are you winning? Are you winning at life?
Yeah, absolutely.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm a positive person by nature. So me being an optimist, I don't necessarily ever think about wins and losses like most people do. I know that there's a perception that most people have in their life, even when they're at their worst times or in ruts, or when they're at their best times, they don't recognize it. For me, I feel like being an eternal optimist, being an optimist my entire life, even when things have been extremely bad in my life, I've never felt like I've been losing, because I always understand that there's always a better way. And so I think, honestly, that's the key to my success. And if you talk to my staff members or my family or my friends, I think that optimism has always led me down a different path. And I don't ever see myself as losing. I always see myself as winning, even when things aren't as good as they can be. But I think that that's not something that is, I feel like it's unique, right? Because oftentimes people do count life as winning or losing, or they feel like they're in a position of wins and losses. So absolutely, I think I'm winning. And I say that not in a way to brag. I just think that that's how you have to frame life in order to be happy for a long period of time. In fact, I had a conversation with one of my coworkers about this recently, because he's going through things, and he is the type of person who is on the other side of that, right? Always feels like things are happening to them, and he consumes that and feels negative about it. But I've been trying to help him understand that you can compartmentalize the bad things, but there's always something else to look forward to. There's always the good things in your life to focus on. Try to do that. And I think that that's been my key to success. So I'm winning.
So this cloud of optimism, do you feel like you're like airy fairy? Like if somebody's like, well, maybe that's not the truth. Like, do you feel like it?
No. And I think I will say that there have been times in my life where I've experienced things, where I've had bad leadership, where I've worked in places where I haven't felt valued, or I've had really bad directors or city managers. And that's what's made me reframe how I think about things, because at a certain point I was pretty down in the dumps about my career, feeling like I had people who were dictating my life for me, right? And it's hard because you feel stuck, and I felt stuck at a certain point. And so it's the weirdest thing, but going through an experience where you have somebody who you feel is holding you down, you almost get to a breaking point, which I believe I did mentally. And I just started not caring about the bad things. And it's bad to say that. It's not that I'm not internalizing it, or it's not that I don't care about the bad things. Like most people care. I genuinely care about them. I just don't focus on them, right? And so when I talk about me being an eternal optimist, it's not so much about the always being happy and always smiling and things are always great. It's really just not caring about the bad things and always focusing on the good. And it's a hard thing to do. It's not for everybody. I recognize that. But
Were you raised that way?
yes and no. I have two parents who are both on the opposite sides of that wavelength.
Oh,
I have a mom who worries about everything and is one of the most negative people you will ever see about most things, right? She's a great person, but she tends to go down the path of negativity. My dad, on the other hand, is very optimistic about things, and he's a very faithful person, right? He's a very devout Catholic, and he has used his faith to keep him moving forward in life and not think about the bad things. I don't know if you know this, but when I was 10 years old, my mom went in for a hysterectomy and they accidentally nicked her bowel. And they didn't realize it until about 3 days later when she was in septic shock. And she had 8 surgeries. She was in intensive care for weeks. Didn't expect to make it. And so it was a pretty rough time. We didn't know whether or not my mom was going to be here,
and you remember this as a 10-year-old?
I was 10. Yeah, it was very vivid.
Okay, yeah. I don't remember very many things when I was 10.
You would if you go through something like that.
Yeah, right.
But seeing my dad go through that and how his faith kept him positive throughout the years has been great. And my mom never recovered from that, really. So even to this day, she's been pretty much bedridden, disabled for 34 years now. It's weird to think about it. It's been 34 years. Yeah.
Wow.
But going back to the optimism, negativity thing, pessimism, I understand sometimes why my mom has that sense of pessimism because she has had that experience. But my dad's always been an optimist because I think his faith leads him down that path. So I personally have chosen to be an optimist because I see how positive thinking, positive reinforcement, and just really focusing on the positive can lead you down a better path even during the worst times of your life. And so it's interesting because I see it a lot where you have parents who are either negative or positive and how much that influences their children. And I personally am trying to influence both of my children to take advantage of that, because I honestly believe that really, if you can tune out the bad things in your life and you really understand how to do that, the sky's the limit for you.
But what's bad? Like, I think everybody has a different definition of bad.
I think that when I say bad, I mean things that are more of an inconvenience than an actual hindrance, right? Because I think sometimes we focus on things like, I had a job interview and I didn't get the job, and maybe I'm not good enough to do this, and maybe I should focus on something else. Or you get stuck in a rut where you don't understand what the next path in your life is, right? Where sometimes you're like, I guess I need to go get my master's, but I'm not going to do it for whatever reason. And you tend to be in this cycle of negativity. And I think that's the bad I'm trying to get people not to focus on, right? Think about a path forward. Think about goals. Think about all of the things in your life that you value. Really focus on that, and all the other stuff they become more of a nuisance than a bad thing, right? And so it's been difficult. Don't get me wrong. It's not that everything is always sunshine and roses, but when you frame it, you win more days than you lose. Basically, that's the optimism that I'm trying to instill in the kids, and what I even try to instill through my leadership.
So why do you think people can't think that way? What's the obstacle there?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think that sometimes it's your environment, right? Sometimes you have friends that you live in that constant cycle of negativity with. It's an echo chamber. So sometimes you're in that echo chamber with friends and family, and it's just you're constantly bouncing negativity off of each other. I have a coworker whose siblings we were talking about this today, and they both are so negative that they just constantly feed negativity to each other, and it's at the detriment of the family, right? And so I think it's environment. I think it's family. Sometimes I think people just don't understand how to get out of it. And I'm not saying I have the answer to that, because obviously if I did, I would be a billionaire by now.
But how would you coach an employee that's like that?
I have coached employees like this. And again, I think it really is about reframing your train of thought to focus on the positive. And it's definitely easier said than done. But when you start to get the hang of it, when you really start to understand that I do have a lot of really good things happening in my life, or I can chart a path that's going to make me successful. And obviously success it differs wildly from person to person, but even small successes can get you to that big success, right? Don't think about, I'm here today, but I want to be a doctor tomorrow. Think about, maybe I should be a nurse's aide today. Maybe that's my first step. And then my next step is maybe I'll be a nurse. And then after that, maybe I can be a physician's assistant. Maybe I could take this step at some point. Constantly move. Because when you move and you always have incremental goals to look forward to, you tend to focus on the positive, right? Because having a goal is a positive thing. So continuing to focus on the good things you have and focus on the goals, whether small or large, will help you think about things more positively.
So let's talk about goal setting, because I have a problem with goal setting, and that I don't achieve my goals ever. So it's like, help me.
I think you're wrong. I think you do achieve your goals. I think that you probably, when you're thinking about goal setting, you're thinking about an end goal, right? Like here is the ultimate state of where I want to be. And I think that's a fallacy, because it's like winning the lotto, right? Like, I can't wait to play the lotto, because when I win, I've already got it spent. We all do this. We all play the game of once I hit this lotto, I've got these cars I'm buying this house, I'm giving money to this person. And I think goal setting works in the same way sometimes. We set these grandiose goals of like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do this. But we forget about the journey there sometimes. And I think when I talk about goal setting, it's not even really goal setting in the traditional sense. It's really just having something to look forward to getting to an end, right? If this was the goal, let's not shoot for this right away. Let's take some steps in there to get to that goal. And who knows, maybe that's not even the goal at the end of the journey. And I've experienced that, where I thought I was going to do one thing and this was my goal. And I set out to chart that course incrementally. And then eventually I get to a point where it's like, man, this actually wasn't the goal. When I was thinking about this here, as I've gone through this journey, I've diverted to this goal over here. And so I'm glad that I've focused on the smaller things, because it's led me down a path that I'm not forcing myself to try to be here. Because when you force yourself here, that's when you set yourself up for failure.
So do you because there's an argument of begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So
I don't do that.
I was going to say, you probably don't align with that.
No.
Why? Why not?
I guess it's a philosophical thing. I mean, the end can be so different through the journey, like I just mentioned, right? If it's okay to have that goal, right? Like, my daughter is in college right now and she wants to be an attorney. And I think that's a great goal. That's the end, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this so that I can do this. But I've also told her, I really want you to chart that course, and I want you to plot out what that course looks like. But when I also wanted to be an attorney when I first started college, right? I had an internship at a law firm and I hated it. It was awful. And it took me down a completely different path, right? So
do you think that's blending into what she wants to do? Because I hear some negativity there. Like, she wants to be an attorney and you're not like 100% on board.
I'm 200% with it.
Okay.
But, and I talk about this, like we've talked to her recently about this. I hope we're not pushing you down that path. I hope that my dream is not your dream, that this is something that you've wanted to do on your own volition and something she wants to do. She has a goal in mind. But I keep telling her that I love that you have that goal, but be sure that you pay attention through that journey to make sure that that end state is where you want to be. So I guess it's okay to have that end goal in mind. Sure, you need a target, right? But at the same time, putting so much stock into that, I think, leads to failure, because oftentimes throughout that journey, if you divert that path, then you feel like you failed at that goal. But no, you're just creating a new path.
Well, and the reason why I brought that up is because I read the book. I don't know if you've read it. 10X is easier than 2X.
Oh, I have.
Okay. So what's your opinion on that?
The whole 10X philosophy and mindset.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but you know, the abundance mindset, the abundance thinking.
Yeah.
I think it's good because it allows you, it starts the wheels turning. That's important, right? At least thinking about goals and how you can get to a certain place is fine. But I don't know if it's the 2X, the 10X mindset thing. I don't really put a lot of faith into that because it's so linear, right? It doesn't allow you to change your path because you always are putting so much time and effort into, you know, the things, the 10X things, or
well, that's the whole point, is that you say no to a lot of things and you say yes to very few things. Mm-hmm. So I would think that you would be
I
on
would
board
love to-
with that.
I would love
Mr.
to-
Optimistic guy.
But yes, here's where my pessimism comes in.
Okay.
I'd love to see
I think
statistics
you're
on
leading
that.
with pessimism
Well,
here.
I would love to see statistics on how successful that program has been.
Okay.
Because I feel like, and this is my honest opinion, things like 10X are more of a money generating technique to
It's a headline?
sell seminars and to buy books, more so than it is an actual effective method of creating goals and setting goals and planning goals and success. Right. So I would love to see. I'm skeptical. I'm not a pessimist, but I'm
Okay.
skeptical. I need data to prove things to me a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Scientific method works, right? And so prove that to me. And I would love to see it. And maybe I'm wrong. And again, my mindset is not for everybody. I recognize that. That's why if I could replicate this and I thought everybody could do what I've done mentally and kind of change and challenge my own mindset, I'd be selling books. I'd be the 10X guy doing the same thing, trying to sell books.
Do you think your mindset holds you back then?
No, sometimes. Let me back up. I said no, but
Are we having two podcasts here?
we might be. No, yes and no. How about that?
Yeah.
So we'll start with the yes
Speaking like a true
podcast.
city manager here.
That's right. Give me two answers. Well, this is the first.
two answers.
We'll go
They're
down.
both right.
They're both right, of course.
Okay.
So the yes podcast that will start
Okay.
has it.
You getting this, buddy?
Has
'Cause it's like, how's this working out back there?
This is grade A entertainment
This
right now.
is.
Let me tell you yes and no. So, has it held me back? Yes, and I think it's because maybe I'm more risk averse. And you and I have talked about this before, right?
We
I
have.
think that maybe
So
less
you're an
willing.
optimistic, risk aversion person.
Yeah,
That sounds conflicting.
kinda, but not really. Now let's go through that. So I think that my
crazy.
yes has it held me back. Let me back up. I don't know if it's held me back from anything. Do I think I should be worth $100 million right now? Yeah, and I think I could do it. Right. I see other people in my circle who have achieved a lot of success. Right. Who make so much more money than me. Who have achieved notoriety and do I think I can do that? Absolutely. I think I can do anything. I'm one of those people that if I set my mind to it, I believe that I could be anything, right? I believe that if I wanted to change my path today, I could be a doctor, I could be a chemist. I cut my own hair, for crying out loud, and I have for 25, 30 years of my life.
This podcast is sponsored by Estrada Real Estate Group. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing in real estate, we can help you. Text us at 303-832-2120. Now back to the Estradanary Conversation.
Right? I'm like the ultimate DIY guy, but it's because I have faith in my mind that I can do everything. So
is that
Is
a
my
cop
risk-
out? Is it
No.
a cop out?
No, I don't
to be
think so.
like, oh, if I wanted it, I would go do it. But I don't want it, so I'm not going
not
to
a
go
cop
do
out.
it.
Not a cop out. I think that I've thought a lot about this because we talk a lot about risk aversion and am I afraid to take steps to achieve that? I don't think it's really it's fear by any stretch. I actually think I have a lot of business I haven't accomplished in my current state. And I've thought a lot about my path to where I've gotten to this point. And I've done a really good job of always looking at the next step and getting to that next step, right? If it's, going from being a average everyday frontline employee to being the city manager, right? The CEO of the city. Every step of the way, I've always achieved that goal. And now that I'm here at the pinnacle of my career, right? Or the pinnacle of my industry, it's not necessarily about, is it a cop out or am I too risk averse to take the next step? I don't think I'm ready for a next step. And I think that's what holds me back, right? Is I feel like I still have so much more to accomplish in my current state. Why should I take a risk right now? Because I feel like what I have is a good thing. But, in the city of Brighton, going into my career here, up until I became our city manager, we had some troubles, right? I was the 5th city manager in basically 6 years. And
High turnover.
for those that don't know what a city manager is, right? I'm the CEO of a city. I oversee all operations of the city. We have 400 plus employees and 14 departments, and it's my responsibility to make sure that whatever council's policies are, whatever council's vision is, and whatever rules and laws that they set, they get done, right? I'm the conduit of that. It goes from city council to me to staff. We've had a really big disconnect in our community because we've grown so much so quick about getting things done, right? We needed a new water treatment plant. We were at capacity for our old water treatment plant, but we were growing so much that kind of took our eye off the ball. Then there was a little bit of controversy that happened in the community, but we hadn't been completing the projects that our residents needed. I became the city manager, and again, just having that mindset of let's get things done. Think about the positive here. We have an opportunity to make change. Right now, I have $250 million worth of capital improvement projects happening concurrently right now.
Wow.
Obviously, that's more than the city has done throughout its entirety, right? You take the 100+ year history of our city, and we haven't even come close to spending that amount of money or completing that amount of projects. So I have unfinished business. I want to see these projects through. We just opened up a $30 million municipal service center where our utilities and public works guys have their vehicles, and it's a fleet maintenance shop. It's a very big deal for the community. We just completed that project 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
And that's one step of the way, though. And so I think about things like, again, going back to my aversion to risk. Maybe not, though, right? Because doing some soul searching, maybe it's not that I'm scared to take a risk, but maybe I don't want to right now because I still feel like I have so much unfinished business. And that's also my motivator too. I talk to Anna a lot about, sometimes I get bored, right? I'm like, man, I think I'm bored in my career, or I think I'm ready for something new, but then something will bring me back to it, right? Like that's a moment in time, but then I'll have meetings, or we'll start planning the next project, or I'll have a conversation with somebody who is talking about things we need to do for the future. And it kind of brings me back to the point of, I really am okay where I'm at right now. And so that's when I haven't been okay with where I'm at I've always made a choice to move on, and I'm not there yet. So I don't think it's a cop out, and I don't think it's held me back. I also think it's given me perspective, though. It allows me an opportunity to reflect on whether or not I'm doing what I really want to be doing. So it's an interesting
thing. So did you choose this path?
No, nope. Again, going back to that end goal, if that end goal was an end goal, if I would have started from the goal and worked my way down, like you hear a lot, I never would have been a city manager. I started off wanting to be an attorney, right? And then I thought, maybe I'm going to be a lobbyist. Maybe a federal lobbyist would be really cool, because I love politics. Politics has been something that I've loved my entire life. And so I knew that I was going to do something in politics. But then as I've gone through my career, I'm like, I could be a real estate developer. I see so many people doing this. I have all the institutional knowledge, right? I oversee an entire city, from planning to utilities to public works to economic development. I understand the entire package. It would be pretty easy for me to jump into that role, right? Especially if I wanted to make money. If money was the goal, that's where I'd go, and I feel like I could be successful. But I've never thought about that end goal as the goal I'm looking forward to, right? As I've started my career, I started in the city and county of Denver at the airport. I worked in a workforce center where...
Baggage claim? No,
I would have rather worked in baggage claim, to be honest with you. So
not that baggage claim is a bad job. It's just... No, I get it.
I started my government career at the airport, working in the workforce center, where we had folks come in who were looking for jobs, right? Like a workforce center is a place where, you come in, you use our computers to do your resume or search on the web for jobs. And this was 2007, where the world was a little bit different. 2007.
Yeah, is there internet back then?
I mean, we had stone
dial-up?
Tablets and abacus and thingy. It was just weird back then. But no, we used to have a system called Connecting Colorado. So we'd have people come in, they'd get on Connecting Colorado, which was like an early version of a job board, right? And so anybody who, if you had a job in Colorado, typically you'd post it in there. And then let's say you were on unemployment. You would log into Connecting Colorado, and you'd look for jobs there, and it would log all the things that you viewed and all the applications.
Well, it's like Indeed or
it was
something
pretty much
like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we did. So I used to work with the businesses to make sure that they put all of their jobs that they had available into Connecting
All the
Colorado,
postings there.
all the
That's
postings. If
a
they
hub.
had right, a hub.
Yep.
And then I would work with the folks coming in looking for jobs. It was a nightmare.
Wow.
It was hard. That was actually probably the most difficult job I've had in my government career.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough.
Why was it tough? Just people?
People. Because sometimes people have a false sense of what they should be doing in their life, right? Like, I want to be a cashier. So they would come in and tell you that, like, what type of job are you looking for? I want to be a cashier, or I want to be a store manager of one of the stores here. Talk to me about your experience. First of all, there's a language barrier sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you have to understand being a cashier requires a little bit more proficiency of the English language. So I need you. We have classes. We're here to help you with that. So let me send you to the classes. People didn't want to hear that, right? They didn't want to hear that they weren't qualified to do this. But when I would suggest, maybe you should start off as a baggage handler. Frontier's hiring right now. We can get you in right now. Or
because you're not talking to anybody.
Right. Maybe there's another job in this system that we can get you in. I've worked with every business out there to help you get into this. And oftentimes there's a disconnect with what's available and what we think people should do versus what they wanted to do. It was tough. And then there was another component to that job. It was a part of the Workforce Investment Act, which is gone now, but it was a federally funded program that all states participated in, where we got federal dollars to help people get money, right? It created the workforce system that we have today. And we used to have a training opportunity where, let's say you had just been laid off and you wanted to become a barber, right? There's federal government money available for this. So
like money for training,
we would
send you to barber school?
Send you to barber school.
Okay.
Right? And we'd pay for the entire thing, but there were always strings attached, of course, right? Like, once you're done, you have to get a job in this field. You got to finish your classes. We got to make sure that you come and meet with your case manager once a week. So on top of the job placement stuff, there was the case management stuff. It was
So is it an
ridiculous.
accountability issue, or is it just really there's no desire?
Both. I think that there's a huge lack of accountability, but also I think going back to the whole goal setting thing, and this is kind of weird how it comes full circle, is people don't know what they want to do, right? They have an idea maybe of what they want to do, but it maybe is not the right path. And so I think oftentimes people set a chart, they chart a path here, but that journey is not the journey to get you there. And maybe this isn't what's going to be your end goal. So weird how that comes full circle when you talk about it.
Well, yeah, just the example of your daughter, because you're like, all right, well, now it sounds like she knows what she wants to do.
Yeah.
So then how does that work?
Wait till she does an internship. That's the next step, honestly.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. You got to go through that experience. And
we have a really good friend who's an attorney. He is one of the best attorneys in Colorado. And his income proves that, by the way. He's very successful. He is a tough guy. And his job is stressful. It's, in order to be successful in that industry, you have to have a certain mindset and you have to have tough skin. And there's a lot of work, right? It's not for the faint of heart. I hope that she can intern with him when she's done next year with college and looking at law school. I hope she can intern with him, because that's what success looks like. And are you willing to put in the time and effort and consume as much stress as he does in order to be successful? And maybe she won't. And so
you think that she may not like who she has to become?
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's
Will you like that person?
If she became that person, man, maybe I would, because I want her to be successful, right? If, I guess, as a dad looking at your child, if they had to become that to meet their goals and feel like they've accomplished what they've set out to accomplish, I couldn't help but to be happy with that. I hope it's the right path for her, though. I hope it's not artificial, right? Going back to my journey and whether or not city manager was where I wanted to be. You know, I worked in a workforce center. That was great. Then I got promoted to just doing business services at the airport. It's really cool because I got to work with all the businesses doing different things, working with programs. You know, it was
also like
cool.
all the restaurants and things.
All the restaurants. It was really neat.
Oh, that is cool.
But then, of course, we got into a recession, right? Good old recession, changed the world. And our federal government at the time decided to put a whole lot of money into cities and counties and state governments to hire people. So we had a program, the wage subsidy program, where exactly like it sounds, right? We would subsidize people's wages if you would hire them, because our economy was so bad. We wanted to try to stir that type of economic activity. We paid people to hire people. Crappy thing was, most of the time, jobs that were available, they were going to hire these people anyway. And so they would hire people and then send us receipts, and we'd give them half their wages. But I got put into that program, so I got to be a wage subsidy administrator for a long time, for 3 years. It was an interesting program. And again, I was young in my career, so
like
it was
job welfare
cool.
almost.
It was pretty much that.
Yeah.
It was a wild time.
Wow.
Wild time in government.
Okay.
And don't get me, this is funny because I'm a city manager, right? My entire career is government and government responsibility and accountability. We can do a whole nother podcast on the amount of waste that happens in governments.
Yeah. I think that's a hot topic right now.
It's a big one. Yeah. I didn't take the Doge tactic. Don't get me wrong.
Should we Doge Brighton?
I have. I have. I absolutely have.
I think there's a little bias there. I mean, don't you think you need some like third party to look at that?
Yes and no. I was the third party, I think.
Oh, okay.
And we could talk about that later.
Yeah.
But no. But then, so I got into I was promoted again into a business development representative. And at the time, there were only like 4 or 5 of us in the entire city. And we were responsible for certain industries. So each of us had 3 industries that we were responsible for to do business attraction, business retention, business expansion. We connected them with any programs that we had. We did incentives, that sort of thing. And my industries were real estate, finance, and technology. So really weird industries, right? All very different.
Yeah.
And you had to become an expert in each one of those industries. But it was actually a really cool time, especially the technology stuff, because in 2010 and 11, Denver was really starting to boom from a technology standpoint, right? Our tech industry was really picking
Like
up.
what? What companies were coming in?
Bioscience. We had finance companies. We had a lot of we had a lot of venture capital. One of the really cool things that I was able to do and participate in was this merger between technology and healthcare. And there was a small industry at the time. There were a group of businesses that did healthcare tech, right? Where
Like WebMD?
Just like WebMD.
Okay.
But before, during the time of WebMD, but even more than that, like we had a company, they were the first company to do telemedicine via video, right?
Oh,
This
wow.
was before Skype. This was before any of the things that we use today, like Teams. They were the first to create this type of technology. And there was a group called My Rounding who created a specific system for nurses and hospitals to make your rounding, the rounds that you do as a nurse, like so much more efficient. And all these businesses existed, and there was a movement to get everybody together so that this business could talk to this business, or this hospital system can talk to this business, and maybe there's some sort of synergy there. That was probably the most fun I've had in any government job.
Wow.
That was really cool. So going back to like what the city manager thing, I could have gone down the real estate path, right? I got thrown into real estate, and I'm like, I'm not a real estate agent. What am I going to do? How am I going to affect this? And then they forced me to be, my boss at the time was, him and his cousin were the founders of the Colorado Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals.
Oh, yes. That's how we met.
Right?
Yes.
That's how we met. And this is how I got there. So as a part of being the liaison for real estate, I had to attend things like NAR and DMAR and CAREP. And so I started attending these things. And CAREP was an interesting one because I started liking the people that I would meet there. And I started paying attention and being a part of it. And I don't know how this happened or why this happened. I got thrown on the board, right? I'm like, okay, here I am, young guy
That's natural
on a
fit
board.
for you.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. It was my first board position.
Okay.
I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. So I got thrown on the board, and then somehow, some way, I was like, you know what? You've got what it takes to be the president. So you're the president of this real estate group that you have no business being a president of. And at the time, I kept telling myself that, right? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Why am I the president? But it's not so much about, I knew what I needed to know about the industry, right? It's real estate. I consumed as much as I could consume. And it was really more about leadership, right? Just making sure that, or being able to be a leader and lead an organization. And I learned early on that once you start to develop the traits of being a leader, it doesn't matter if it's real estate or city management or a hospital or any organization. Having the traits of a good leader really does plug in very well with any industry.
What are those traits?
Well, I think it's going back to the optimism. I think you have to be optimistic, right? You have to always look at a better tomorrow. And you always have to look at what does it take to get to a better tomorrow. And you have to understand that you have to keep moving forward, right? Progress is the name of the game. And every industry needs progress. And it's not that you always have to grow, but you just have to progress towards something, right? And in CAREP's case, the progression was, of course, to grow the membership, but also to try to redefine who we were, because the organization it was a long time organization, but it had been stagnant for a little bit. And interestingly enough, growing the organization meant merging with another group that had existed, which a group you know very well, right?
Yeah.
NAREP, which was, it had gone away for a long time, which is the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. Colorado, CAREP was that group for a
Just
long time.
local.
It was the
more
local
local,
chapter,
yep.
right? But
Yep.
but NAREP became more nationally recognized. They had a larger national presence, and we recognized that there was more power in joining the larger collective, right? And so it's funny that we talk about growing the organization, right? Moving forward was actually making sure the organization did what it needed to do, and that was not exist anymore in its current state. So helping to oversee that was an interesting thing. But then I got talked into by one of my coworkers and who worked with me in Denver to come to this place called Brighton. And I've grown up, I'm an Adams County guy, right? I've lived here my entire life, grew up here, born and raised here, went to high school here. Brighton has always been like this weird farm town that I went to a couple times. One of my best friends in the world was from Brighton. So you hear Brighton stories and you know people anecdotally, but she's like, come to Brighton. They could use a really good economic developer. And so
Where were you at currently?
I was in Denver still. Yeah.
So, okay.
Still doing the same job, right? Still
Yeah.
my business development job. We were working on really cool things in Denver too at the time. We were working on like the DaVita headquarters, and SCL, Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, was building a headquarters in Denver. And so we were working on those deals, and we had all the tech stuff happening. And I put together the city's first venture capital report, which was really cool, learning about VC and angel investing and being a part of that. And then you have the healthcare and technology stuff. So all these things were really cool, but I felt like maybe I'm done with this, right? Maybe there is something different that I want to do. And I got talked into Brighton, and I hated it. When the minute I got there, the first couple of weeks, it was really weird because the person who talked me into coming to Brighton, within a month, she left. She found a better opportunity in another city, so she took off. And so I'm gonna
get this schmuck in here so I can take off.
Right,
not feel bad about it.
Pretty much. There's a story to this story though too, which I'll get to here in a second. So she leaves, right? And I hated it. Here I am working on projects like, you know, the venture capital stuff and headquarters of companies that are Fortune 500, and being a part of this really big city and everything connected to it, to a place like Brighton where, you know, it's at the time 35,000 residents. And the biggest thing that anybody wanted in Brighton at the time, the first thing anybody said to me walking through the doors on my first day was, "Oh, you're the guy from Denver who's going to bring us an Olive Garden." And I'm like,
oh, what a vision. What a vision.
I thought it was a
Some
joke,
Alfredo.
right? I'm like, Zuppa Toscana and breadsticks? Right on. I can do that. Thought it was a joke.
Yeah. That's legit.
It
was legit. Yeah.
Straight up legit. Like
Yeah.
literally, I was the person who was supposed to
Bring the Olive Garden.
I am the Olive Garden god, apparently, where I'm supposed to bless the city with an Olive Garden.
You kind of look
And so-
Italian. I don't know.
I tell people I am. It's one of my favorite things to say. Like when people assume I'm Hispanic, like, I'm Italian. What are you talking about? Anyway, no. So I get talked into Brighton, and for the first 2 months, I hated it because the person that I trusted left. I liked my boss. Our director of economic development was really good. So I liked him, but I felt like I had made such a poor choice because I was a part of something big. And then I got to this place where Olive Garden and things like that were the name of the game. But what I didn't realize until a few months later, which thinking about it now is funny. So the person who brought me in was the assistant director of the economic development team. She leaves, and I get promoted to that within like a couple months, right? So already I've gotten promoted in the first 3 months that I've been here. 2 months later, the director leaves. He finds a new job because the turmoil at the city was starting to happen. There was some controversy happening, and things in leadership were changing, and so he bails. So here I am, like 5 months into just joining this place. I'm already the director, and I had no idea what I was doing. Right? I'm like, here I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never led a city organization. Going back to car rep, though, I know what it takes to lead. Right? I've successfully led this group. Let's start to create a vision. Right? Let's start to create those little goals. Let's chart that path forward. And man, we took off. I came up with this tagline. Brighton, the next big thing is already here, right? Because when you talk to developers, you talk to brokers, they wanted to always know what's the next big thing, right? What's the next big thing?
They want
in
to try
Colorado?
to predict where it's going to explode.
Exactly.
Right.
And so my whole thing was the next big thing is Brighton. Let's promote ourselves as that next big thing. People keep asking us what the next big thing is. Let's
answer it
right?
for them.
Let's be it. And so that was our tagline. And slowly but surely, we started seeing these deals come in where some of the relationships I had in Denver started to pay dividends. Some of the relationships I was making throughout the time in Brighton started to pay dividends. And then economic development took off, right? We started to get all the restaurants everybody wanted except Olive Garden. And then we start adding all of these primary employment jobs where we added in 2 years, we added just over 2 million square feet of space, industrial space. And so the whole goal of economic development is to increase the tax base of your community, right? So we're adding jobs, we're adding tax growth, and we're taking off. But at the same time, city was going through turmoil. So the city manager who was there when I started, he retires, and I'm going to use the air quotes here. Yeah. So he retires. He was our longtime city manager. And then hire a person who leaves in controversy. Our mayor gets recalled. There was an allegation of a $70 million slush fund and chaos.
Dang.
The city manager that they hired after the city manager who brought me in, him and I didn't see eye to eye a lot. And that was the point in my career where that was the one point of weakness. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I felt lost, right? I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm stuck. I talked to Anna a lot about it. I mean, there were times where I had mentors. I actually cried. I cried in their office because I felt so lost. I felt, and being an optimist, that's a scary place, right? I've built my entire career has been about moving forward. And I had one point of weakness where I just didn't know how to move forward. But things work magically sometimes. And he got moved on. And I was promoted to an assistant city manager role. And that was at the point where I told myself, I'm never going to let somebody dictate to me my future, right? Because I felt like he kind of had the control over me, the puppet mastering, telling me at times he didn't believe my vision was the right vision. And who was I to tell him that he was wrong? I believed he was wrong. Obviously, I think the rest of the city did based on what happened in the future. But I didn't want somebody to dictate my future for me, right? So at that point, I knew, I think I'm going to be a city manager because I don't want anybody else to control my destiny. And went back, got my master's. I knew that having my master's was kind of the threshold. You needed it. Some city managers don't have it, but in order to be taken seriously, you got to do it. And I love learning. For me, consuming knowledge is something that I do every single day, maybe to a fault. So getting my master's was easy. It was no problem. But I had to do it, right? So I was the oldest person. Well, I was the second oldest. We had a person who was in their 70s get it, which was great. But going through this program, it was a very specific program.
In your class? Yeah. Okay.
Going through the master's program, I mean, it got to a point where I was helping teach most of the classes because it was about, the goal is it produces city managers. It's a really cool program through the University of Colorado at Denver. Okay. And over the course of years, it's produced so many city managers and assistant city managers and city council members in Denver. And so it's a really cool program. But I get to teach the classes because I've been doing this for so long that I have more knowledge than most of the instructors who are doing it, which is funny. You go through the program, assistant city manager. They hire a city manager who she was great. I thought that she was a very good transitional city manager, but she wasn't from Colorado, felt a little bit out of place. It just didn't work out. Right.
Yeah.
So at the end of her first year, it was time to move on. Council and her mutually parted ways. And I guess I was the only person left after having 5, right? Because I started with
Still want the Olive Garden. This is our only hope.
Person who hired me, he was gone, right? We had an interim that stuck around. He was our police chief. So we had an interim city manager for a year, and then he retired. And then we hired the other person. She was gone. We had another interim for a while, and then I get hired. So it's 5, right? 5 and 6 years.
Poor little Brighton. I mean, it's just
Terrible.
It's just taking a beating.
It has. So, but then here I am, right? Council believed in me because they saw my vision of leadership, right? Every step of the way, my little method of just moving forward was proven right. It was just, we can get these things done. Let's just do these things. Let's keep moving forward. And whatever progress is, but let's make sure that we know people understand what progress is. And then the rest is history. Here I am 4 years later with $250 million worth of projects doing more. And it's not me, right? It's us, the collective, believing we all can do it. Because I recognize that, yes, I'm the city manager and I get to sign the paychecks at the end of the day. I don't do the work though, right? I have 400 employees. They do the work. The reasons that things get done are not because of me necessarily. It's because we have employees who are empowered to do it. And that's the secret to my success in Brighton as a city manager, is empowering my directors to empower their people and make sure that culturally we have the best city we possibly can. We've done a lot of things to really improve culture, going back to the Doge thing. And it started with leaning the operation, right? I think that sometimes you have to, there is addition by subtraction. And one of the cool things I did in Denver was a program called the Peak Academy, where it taught you lean methodology. So I'm sure you've heard of lean and Six Sigma. And so it was an interesting twist on lean and Six Sigma and government, because those things, right? Process improvement and government don't necessarily go together. They're the opposite. Going back to what I was saying about government waste, man, lean and government are completely on different sides of the thing. So this was an attempt to try to change that mindset.
Did you get pushback?
When I started, so I in Denver, we did this. It was fine in Denver. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. But for a city like Brighton, where you could actually measure the impact, absolutely it worked. But we did get impact, because when I came in, I had some other folks who had gone through that same training, and I wanted to do it Brighton style, right? I wanted to take the cool process improvement things, marry them with leading from any seat, which is another concept, right? Like, everybody can be a leader. Going back to what I just said about me and my leadership journey, everybody can do that. I promise you can. It's just about having the tools and understanding what leadership looks like. So you marry those two things. And I had a really forward-thinking person who put a really cool program together, but I was forcing everybody to go through it, because I thought we all have to speak the same language. If process improvement's going to be something that we do, we all have to believe it together. And it's been 3 years since we've implemented that program. There's an annual cost savings that we can actually measure of over $1 million to the city because of that, because of the things that we implement, because of the things that the employees have done. Over $1 million worth of savings, but it's also got people to think more about how we can do things better, faster, maybe with less resources, right? Let's not forget, we had COVID. COVID destroyed municipal budgets. And coming out of COVID, when I became the city manager, when we were still dealing with the effects of COVID, that was really something I wanted to focus on. Let's make sure that we're resilient, that we create a leaner process for our government. And it's worked. So it's been cool. It's been a weird journey.
It sounds like you've had a lot of fun. It's been challenging.
There's, like I said, short of that one time where I felt pain, not knowing if what I was doing was the right path, and then I didn't know what another path was, because honestly, going back to the conversation about setting that high goal, I think I started to see that path. And then I started to set that goal here, knowing that if I'm going to stay in government, city manager is the pinnacle of that. So you set that goal. And when there's an impediment to that and you kind of feel like that's not a goal anymore, that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But short of that, and then short of thinking about, wow, I'm in Brighton, Colorado. Short of those two things, it's been great.
Yeah.
Once I kind of understood that, maybe this isn't Denver, but the impact that I can have is significantly more. You work on a deal like DaVita, right? Or you work on some of these bigger deals that we were doing in Denver, or some of the bigger impact projects. There's no thanks, right? You don't get like this is fantastic, you've changed the world.
Right.
It's just on to the next project,
Mhm.
right? There's so many projects that everything is just this tiny piece
It's
of that
diluted.
pie.
Yeah.
Extremely diluted.
Mm-hmm.
But you bring an Olive Garden to the community, and there's
You're
a statue.
changing
There's
people's
a
lives.
statue
Yeah.
waiting for you, right? Honestly,
Yeah.
we brought Texas Roadhouse. Texas Roadhouse was one of the most difficult deals that I worked on personally. But man, you would have think that
Why would a
we were
Texas
here.
Roadhouse? Because they
They're-
demand some stuff.
They demand stuff.
Yeah, because
have
they
a-
know what their product
Yeah.
is and what it means for the
and
economy.
every
Yeah.
economic development deal, every developer, every company, they have an algorithm. They know what works. You can't throw good money at a bad deal. They know what's going to work. So it was difficult getting them. here.
They
They've
have all
had
the
some
leverage.
challenges. They have all the leverage.
Yeah.
But anyway, you do something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it seems in Denver, that would not even be a blip on anybody's radar.
Right.
But here in Brighton, it's changed the game, which for me has changed my mindset too, because I realize, dang, I actually have impact on people's lives now in a way that I didn't before. And that satisfies me significantly. And that's helped change and help me reframe my goals too. Understand when you really start to understand the impact that you have, it's a powerful thing.
Have you looked at other cities as a model of like,
No,
ooh, that's a really cool.
it's a dangerous thing.
Why is that?
Because then you start to believe you need to be that. I've had other cities who's reached out to us. I won't say the cities, but cities that are close to Brighton, because of the amount of success we're having. How do we copy and replicate what you're doing? That's the
What's
you're
your
the
blueprint?
model.
Blueprint. Yeah.
And I'll tell anybody, mayors, I've talked to mayors, I've talked to city managers, I've talked to council members, I've talked to people, even in the development world, and I'll tell them, don't ask me that because I don't have your answer. What we do in Brighton is a very specific thing to my circumstance. What you have in city A and city B, I can't replicate. There are some things that you can do better. The things that we did, creating relationships and understanding what developers want or understanding what the community really wants. Those are things that you can do, but you'll never replicate the success of my city, and I'll never replicate the success of a city that I think is a model city. I look at other cities, and I'm again, being a student of the game all the time, I take bits and pieces of what I think are important from people who are successful, but I'd never think about how can I do that? How can I be that? Or why can't my city be that city? Everything is so circumstantial in local
Every
government.
city has its own DNA.
It does. And I hate it when cities try to replicate the success of other cities. It doesn't work. For example, City A, Brighton has a really cool location, right? We have highways, we have both rail lines going through the city. We've got a historic charm about us. We have a historic downtown. We're growing. We're one of the only metropolitan cities or suburb cities in the metropolitan area that actually have room to grow, right? We're a Denver metro city that actually has space to grow. That's unique.
That's by an airport.
We're 15 minutes away
Right.
from the airport, door to
Right.
door. And so our circumstances, we have a really cool thing when you mix that together. But you have a city that's close to us who wants to do exactly what we're doing and is pushing their city manager or their economic development director to replicate what we do. You don't have a highway. You don't have the same visibility we do. You don't have the same amount of land to develop that we do. You don't have the same opportunities as Brighton. So please don't try to be it. And I think in life, that's something that we focus on too much, is trying to be something that we can't be, right? Even though we see somebody's success, going back to the success, the measure of success, sometimes we want to be something. Maybe it's that goal, or maybe it's that person that we try to emulate. We want to be it so bad, and we get frustrated and we feel like we're defeated because we don't become that. And I hate that. And for me, maybe that's another part of my risk aversion, but also maybe it's my common sense telling me don't try, because you can't replicate that.
Then what
It's
questions
circumstantial.
should those cities be asking themselves?
How can we take what we have? The city that does it really well, and this is funny, the guy who hired me in economic development in Brighton, he was the former economic development director in Federal Heights. Federal Heights is an interesting place, right?
It's landlocked.
Well, and they're known for their mobile home parks.
Yeah.
The majority of their land is either Waterworld or mobile home parks. It's the truth. There's not a lot to it. They don't have a lot of room for they don't have a lot of room for economic development. Right. But he came in and maybe I take a little bit, and let me back up about leadership too. The traits that I've taken from people are bits and pieces of the things that I think are going to that I can do that can make me successful. For example, I had a mentor who I would consider a mentor. The guy was a master networker. He taught me how to network. And I knew I was never going to be as effective as he was, because he had a certain charm about him and he was very businesslike. But I picked the nuances that I could do, and I started to become really good at networking, right? I had one of my favorite managers. He taught me about, it's not always about the time that you put into your work, right? 40 hours is a long time to get stuff done. If you as a professional can't get done in 40 hours here in local government, what you have in front of you, you have a problem. You have a personal problem. He taught me, really, this was the start of like lean methodology. Get what you need to get done, figure out a better way to do it. Because if you can't get it done in 40 hours, I'm going to let you go. You're not who I need. So I've always tried to pick and choose people, or pick and choose things from people, leaders that I know that I can replicate that mean something to me. I'm not trying to be them. I'm just trying to take the best of what I think they've offered and build that into myself, right? I call it the Voltron effect, right? I'm trying to take bits and pieces here to grow into that leader. Federal Heights. So one of the things that I've taken from, and this is where I get the mentality of don't try to be another community, just do what you do really well. When he was there in Federal Heights, he would preach this to everybody. We're going to be the best mobile home community that you've ever seen. And that's our strength, right? We're not going to be Thornton. We're not going to have a mall in Federal Heights. But what I can do is I can tell you that we've got really good charm because we have a community built on people, working class people. And if that sounds enticing to you, then this is the place you should be. And he was successful. He actually got some economic development deals done that shouldn't have gotten done. And I thought, man, if you can get that done in Federal Heights and you've proven to people that this city has charm, that's a really good technique. And I think that's what I've taken when I think about trying to be something that we're not. I use that model, right? Like I know that Federal Heights is never going to be Arvada, but what he did was prove that if you can really sell the charm and sell the things that your community does really well, that's the path. And
so get real about who you are. Figure out that identity.
Find your identity. And
what's Brighton's identity?
We are a historical agricultural community in the Denver metro area that has room to grow, right? And I think that's a cool identity. We are situated in a way that we don't feel like we are in the Denver metro area, right? Again, going back to my perception growing up of Brighton being a cow town, I think that's still a perception to a lot of people. Brighton, my gosh, where's Brighton? Is that Nebraska? Right. But we're 20 minutes from downtown Denver. I literally get from my house in Brighton to downtown Denver in 20 minutes, 25 if it's bad, right? I can get from my house to Ball Arena. It takes me exactly 25 minutes. So we're not far. And then we sell that though, right? Like it doesn't feel like you're in a Denver metro area city, but you are. You still have access to all of that, but you have charm. You have a really cool historic city that is unique, right? And we sell that. We're never going to have a Denver Tech Center style office space. That was something that council for a while wanted us to pursue, right? Like we need to be the tech center of the north.
Tech center up north.
No,
yeah.
Why? We don't have the traffic to do that, right? I-25 is the major corridor in Colorado, and the Denver Tech Center is where? off I-25, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Thornton can do that. They have plenty of off ramps off I-25. Office space makes sense there, but no one's going to come to an office park off Highway 85, right? It's just not going to happen. Yeah. So people have wanted us to do that. We're never going to be known as this major metropolitan city, right? Some cities that are big want to be bigger. Like, let's grow to the size of Aurora. We have space to do it. I've recognized that we don't. Why do we want to do that? We're managing growth in a way that I think is responsible to our current residents and our future residents. There's no reason for us to grow haphazardly. So let's not pretend like we need to be that. We're never going to be that. I think Brighton is a pretty cool, unique place that has an identity that we should keep, right? And that's what we sell. And we're doing a good job of it. And we also sell the fact that we're growing responsible, going back to that.
What's responsible?
We hold developers to a pretty high standard. I know the development community doesn't like that a lot. We get a lot of pushback about, this is the most difficult place we've ever had to work because, city A and city B just let us go and do this and build this. And we have a really high standard of development because we believe that it's an opportunity, right? Developing is an opportunity to be in a community. It's not just a right. And I get it. There are property rights and we respect that, but it's also an opportunity. And if you want the opportunity to develop in our community, you're going to step it up. And whether that's residential, commercial, industrial, retail, we have pushed developers to do better. And I think that's responsible.
Consistent? Like, what does that mean?
Better
material? Is it
better
aesthetically better
materials? One thing that we do here, two things that we do that are different from most communities. We have a rule that development pays its own way, meaning that if you're going to develop in this community, that you are going to pay for all the infrastructure that you build. So a lot of communities don't do that, but we force communities to build all the roads. So for example, let's say that you have a corner of there's 4 corners on the road here. You have a corner of that. If you're the first person to build, we're making you build the entirety of the road both ways. It's a big deal, right? Developers say that's terrible. It's going to cost us 7 times more than what we've expected. Not a good deal. But over time, you're going to get reimbursed because when the corner across the street from you develops, you get 1/4 of that back.
Oh, they still pay.
And then, over time, development's going to pay their way. The city's not going to do it. Most people expect the city to pay for that. City upfronts the money.
Taxpayers.
Yeah. And then we build all the infrastructure and developers, they pay us back. Development pays its own way in our case. And it's caused a bit of strife amongst the development community, but it's responsible to our residents. And it's worked. Look how many things we have happening in Brighton. If it were so bad, we wouldn't have those, right? And I think developers now respect that. Developers understand what we're trying to accomplish, and they see that we're holding them to a higher standard for a reason. It actually makes their properties worth more money, right? It actually increases property values. It increases aesthetics so that over time, your buildings don't deteriorate. We don't have blight. It's a pretty unique way of city building, but it's working. And I think that's what I mean when I say we're growing responsibly. And we're not growing just haphazardly either from a residential standpoint. You see cities that just have houses popping up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We're growing fast, but not at a pace that's untenable. We have mechanisms in place to make sure that we're not overwhelming staff because, we still have a small staff. Even though we're growing, we still only have 4 or 5 people that do plans for everything. Last year, we had 500 plus single family detached permits. It's a big deal, right?
That's a lot.
That's a lot for a small city. And when you have 4 people doing every one of those permits and developments, not to mention the hundreds of thousands of square feet in commercial that we did and all or industrial and all the commercial opportunities and, things like churches, we have like 5 people total to do all of these things. So I don't want to overwhelm staff. Wow. So we have to be responsible to staff, but we also have to make sure that we're not allowing development to happen to us, right? That we can dictate it so that we can grow it slowly, consistently in a way that makes sense for our city and our taxpayers. So that's been a big deal. And I'm going to say this, and this is...
Is this controversial?
No, not at all.
Oh, dang it.
What was the thing that was asked of me when I first walked into the city of Brighton? Am I going to be the guy that brings Olive Garden to Brighton?
Oh, yes.
Olive Garden opens in May of this year. So forget the fact that we've done 250, almost $300 million worth of capital projects.
Does not matter.
Forget the fact that we've added at least 3 million square feet of industrial space to our community over time. Forget we have so many other restaurants that are in Prairie Center because of the things that I and we have done in our community. Forget all that stuff.
Yeah.
When I walk out of here on my resume, in fact, I might change my LinkedIn profile to make sure it says this. Michael Martinez, responsible for Olive Garden in Brighton. You're welcome.
That would be your legacy.
It better be.
It will be. It'll be on your tombstone.
Being a humble guy, I didn't want to bring this up, but I really believe that when you get to the entrance of Olive Garden, I think it should be Martinez Drive.
It's not a bad idea. I think you could make that happen.
As much grief
I know a guy.
flack that I've got over the years about this Olive Garden and my predecessors before me, we need something.
What is this, a decade long?
More than that. We as a city, my economic development predecessors before me started working with Olive Garden, I think 2007.
So then in May, you finally made it.
Yeah, well,
as a city.
They built. It's actually built and done. They're training their staff now.
Wow. Are you going to be the first one? You can do ribbon cutting?
Man, that first breadstick better be on
face.
my desk. I'm actually gonna bronze it. I think I'm bronzing that thing.
That is awesome.
It's funny though. It's like quietly we have In-N-Out going behind it. And so In-N-Out,
so it's not a
monster,
yeah.
right? That thing is going to produce so much sales tax revenue for the city. That's going to be.
Was that a hard deal?
No, that's the funny part.
Is Olive Garden's problem,
it's funny because you go to any city and they're like, In-N-Out is the thing that we want the most because it's a monster. It's a tax producing behemoth, right? So they were great to work with. It was a relationship thing where I talked to the guys that. Stan Kroenke is the largest landowner in Brighton. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not know that.
So Stan Kroenke owns what's called our Prairie Center, which is our major retail area. And Stan Kroenke's team in Brighton, they've been really good to work with. And so having the relationship with the Kroenke team, having the relationship with the brokers and the people who represent the Olive Gardens and the In-N-Outs of the world, you just promote the fact that Brighton is the next place, the next big thing, right? That's where you want to be. And they came in, worked with us, didn't have any problems with our higher development standards.
Wow.
And quietly just started building, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's just push this deal through. And they got through and no incentive required, which was a really big deal.
Wow.
Yeah. I've had to
That's
incentivize.
a sweetheart deal.
Yeah. So that's fine. And, that's going to be.
You're not going to be remembered for that. No.
And it wasn't even, I didn't even have to do anything for it. So I don't want to be remembered for that. But it's Olive Garden at the end of the day that seals my fate.
When I eat some unsalted fries, I'm going to think of you.
You should. You should. When you have that double animal style, it's the Martinez special.
Is that the same Martinez Drive? Does it get to both restaurants?
Gets to both.
Really?
It does.
Okay.
It sure does. They're right next to each other. Texas Roadhouse is right next to it too. So
dang,
it's a pretty good spot.
That's really grown.
Yeah, we have in my time. Okay, when I started in that area in the Prairie Center, we had Buffalo Wild Wings, Chili's. That was it. Yeah. Buffalo Wild Wings and Chili's were the two big things that we had. Those are the only two options we had to eat out there. And the first decent sized restaurant that I worked on was Red Robin.
Oh yeah.
And that was fun. Yeah. They wanted to build a concept that was the size of this room, right? It was like they wanted to build a 12 by 12. And here's another weird thing about Brighton. At the time, the McDonald's in Brighton off of Bromley and Highway 85 was the busiest McDonald's in all of Colorado. We're a hungry community. It's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
The busiest McDonald's in all of Colorado in Brighton, right? That at the time.
I don't know if I've ever been to that McDonald's.
You probably have. You just don't realize it, right? Because who knows about that?
Is it on Bromley?
Yeah, it's on the highway. It's right off the highway.
85.
Yeah, so you know where the car dealership is, right across the street from the car dealership.
Oh, I've been there. Yeah. I think I've been to every McDonald's.
You probably have. So it's crazy because that was busy. That was a really busy thing. When Buffalo Wild Wings opened, they had the largest grand opening in their entire history in Brighton. And they were one of the busiest places in the United States. That was one of the busiest stores in Brighton, Colorado. Weirdest thing, right? Chili's, same thing. They had a very large following. I went to Chili's yesterday for lunch and it was packed, and it always has been. So when I started, we had those two things, and that was something I started to promote. Like, hey guys, according to McDonald's, we have the busiest McDonald's. We had the best grand opening of any Buffalo Wild Wings in their history. And it's the truth. When we opened Red Robin, we finally talked them into a bigger footprint, because we're like, guys, if it's true that we're going to have a massive following,
Yeah.
this little trailer isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
Build a real restaurant. And they did. And one of the best grand openings they've ever had in history. And that place is jammed all the time.
Wow.
So then we did Red Robin, and then we did Olive Garden, and then Chipotle, and then Popeyes, and then Texas Roadhouse, and then Cane's, and Olive Garden, and all the other things that have happened in between. So it's gone from those two restaurants that do really well to this. It's a massive trade area now.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting, but none of this was ever a goal, right? None of this was ever the end goal. It was always just a part of that journey.
Mm.
And that's what I value the most about my time here, is looking back on all those things and realizing that I never set out to do those specifically, but they were always a part of where I needed to be. And I'm glad that I never had my eye on the prize up here, because I don't think I would have ever gotten those things accomplished. I'd have been too focused on trying to be a city manager, and wasn't.
So Brighton's still big enough where Michael Martinez still fits in it.
Yeah, I'll never outgrow
Yeah.
Brighton. I hate that. People tell me that all the time, like, "Oh, you should be the city manager of this city of 400,000 people, or this county of 500,000 people." For what? It's a bigger city, but there are more problems with the bigger city. The politics are different. We've built a really cool, unique thing in the 9 years that I've been here. Why am I going to do something else? Why am I going to try to replicate that? Going back to replicating, when I know that I have built what I've built for a reason, and I don't think I can replicate that same success in another community. It'll take time. I believe that, going back to being a leader, you can plug that into any city and I could be successful, but I don't want to do that. There's a lot of heartache that goes into building something from the ground up. And
You've already paid the tax.
absolutely,
You've already paid, no pun intended.
I
but
have paid the tax.
You've paid the tax.
Yeah.
And why would you want to pay that again?
I don't want to. I'm looking for rebates at this point. I don't need to pay the tax. Give me an incentive. No, but I don't think of myself as ever too big for any position that I'm in. Again, if I thought that, I would have never left Denver, right? If I believed I was bigger than a city like Brighton, I would have. And when I got to Brighton, it wasn't that I felt like I was bigger than the position. I just felt like maybe the stuff that I was doing was on a different level. But when I recognized that the impact that I'm having is so much different, even though maybe it's not this, and maybe I'm not working with the Fortune 500, but man, the impact I'm making on someone's everyday life is way cooler. And that's where I'm at with Brighton. I'm never going to outgrow that, because I know that the impact that I have in my community is really cool. It's a very unique thing. And maybe I can't have that same impact in a city of 500,000 or a million, right? Maybe I value that impact now so much, and it was something I never realized I was going to value. But maybe that's something I value so much that in a bigger city, not having that impact is something that I would hate. So
It's kind of, that's very cool that, you got, but that was sort of like, you think that was by luck?
no, I don't think so.
You think it was on purpose?
Absolutely.
Like, it was like,
that's what I'm talking about with optimism and charting that path, right? All of this was intentional. Every step of the way. Maybe maybe Olive Garden was like the funny thing,
right.
But
that was like
funny,
the carrot,
kinda.
almost. Yeah.
Well, because I never thought I didn't see Brighton growing as much as we have, but I always believed that we were the next big thing. I said it from the beginning, right? And incrementally, it was like, well, maybe we do add the Red Robin, and because Red Robin's here, now we have Old Chicago. And hey, Old Chicago came, let's do a Freddy's too. And then it just starts snowballing. So it wasn't luck, right? All of these things were intentional. And it takes a little bit of luck. I'm not going to lie there. There is circumstance that has to happen in order for these things to be successful. But it was always about that incremental progress to get us to the end goal. And we're here.
So you're almost a decade in?
Yeah,
You're almost a decade in, and you feel like
it'll be a decade in next month.
And you feel like you're just getting started.
Yeah, I have so much more to accomplish.
Yeah.
And you know what's weird about our profession, being a city manager or the CEO of a city or a county, the average time a person's in that role in our industry is just under 3 years. was nuts to me. I don't feel like I started to learn how to be an effective city manager, like really feeling like I knew what I was doing until about that 3-year mark. I think it's wild to me that people just shuffle and shuffle and shuffle. And it's pretty apparent in our community in Adams County. We've had a couple of managers now in the last 3 years in the county. I think every city short of 2 in Adams County have had turnover year over year in their city manager ranks. It's a difficult job because, again, I think some people have a goal of being a city manager and they want it so bad. That was something they started backwards, right? I'm going to go to school for public administration and I'm going to be a city manager, and they want it so bad that they're willing to just kind of move through the ladder so quick, right? Like go from city to city to city to city to do it. And you never find success that way. Maybe you feel personally like every time I do that, I'm trying to achieve that goal, or I'm getting closer to the goal of being like the ultimate city manager, whatever that is. But it's a weird phenomenon. So longevity doesn't really exist. I'm lucky because when I was hired, the person who ended up retiring, he had been there for a long time. And so I had that perspective there in Thornton. Thornton had a longtime city manager who he helped build this entire city. And without him being here and having vision long-term, this city would never be the city that it is. So you need that. But at the same time, politics change, right? Every 2 years I have an election and I have 9 bosses. I have 9 city council members, including our mayor. And at any given point, that can change, right? I can get council members in there or a mayor in there who doesn't believe in the vision the same way I believe in that vision. And I can go, right? It could be so volatile that I leave. Thankfully, paying the tax, the city's also paid that tax too. We've gone through hard times. Our councils now understand what bad looks like. So they're with me on the journey. And I think moving forward through the years, councils are going to be with me through the journey, or with whoever sits in that seat. So it's really cool. But I don't know why today I would leave. I don't know what opportunity would pull me away from that. And I've had plenty of opportunities. People ask me all the time to do this and that, and I consider it, right? Because I'm not one to just discount an opportunity. But at the same time, maybe it's not, I'm averse to the risk. Maybe it's unnecessary. Maybe I value so much that peace that comes with knowing what I've accomplished that I don't need to accomplish anything else right now. And so it's a weird thing.
It's so true you say that, because I think with businesses now, it's, peace is the new profit. You choose peace over, being super profitable or making it big or anything. Yeah.
Any day. It's weird. Yeah. Going back to the money thing, like it's cool to make millions of dollars. I'm sure it is. I'll find out one day maybe. But if it comes at the expense of my own peace and my family's health and peace, why do it? Right? Yeah. That's not a goal. The goal for me is to be happy, right? To live a peaceful life, to make sure my kids have all that they need, to make sure that my wife is happy, and that we live a relatively happy and healthy life, right? And I've learned over the years that you can't put a price on that. If working 70 to 80 hours to make more money is going to provide more things, I don't want to do that. We have enough things, right? I've always had enough things. When I made 40 grand working as a retail manager in my early times, I had plenty of things, right? I don't value those things anymore. It's cool to have them, and it's not, having financial freedom is a good thing, but it also goes back to peace, right? Financial freedom also equals peace. I know plenty of people who make a whole lot of money or have zero peace in their life. Like my man Puff says, more money, more problems, right? And oftentimes
that got him.
All right. It's another podcast. Okay. I'll bring in my chief of police for that one.
Okay, there you go.
And our attorneys. No, but we make more money, and then we find ourselves buying nicer cars, and we find ourselves buying bigger homes, right? And you have to be pretty sound in order to really find peace with making more money. I don't know if I value that right now. Maybe I'll come to a point where I want to make more money because I want to buy a house for the kids, right? Or I want to do something different, but it's not a goal right now. If it was a goal, I feel like I would accomplish it. And that's that positivity, right? I believe it.
What then? All this success, what keeps you up at night?
I think instability keeps me up at night. You know,
instability
I think
in that
political
every
instability,
2 years, like you could
that's
not have a
that's
job.
challenge. You know, it's not easy to run a city. There are a lot. I have 14. I do a lot of babysitting. I'll be honest, right? I have 14 directors, and I have an assistant and deputy city manager, and I have 400 employees. And the challenge of running a $300 million organization is a big deal, right? My budget this year is just under $300 million. Stakes are high, and I worry about making sure that we're always doing the right thing. And I know I always do the right thing, right? Everything that I do, I believe the intention is to do what I believe is right. Right. And
Did you ever get to that edge?
no,
Or like,
no, if I ever felt like I got to that edge, I'm in the wrong place, right? Especially in local government, which is why I think there's a lot of turnover in local government, because people don't do it for the right reasons. They do it for personal reasons. They do it for their own aggrandizement. They don't do it for what is the right thing. And that is what's best for our residents, right? What's best for our community, at least the way I see it. And I'm not willing to cross that line. I think ethics is huge. And another reason why I think I've been successful is because I've been willing to make sure that I put ethics at the forefront, because at the end of the day, who are we without our ethics, right? If we're willing to sacrifice ethics for success, we're not doing it right. And I think that's a huge, important part of being successful. And I believe that. I preach that a lot, but I can't control everybody. And that's another thing that keeps me up at night, is making sure that other people understand and do things for that same reason, because I'm responsible for everybody, even though maybe I believe ethically we need to do this. You know, it only takes one mishap for the city to be on 9 News and Kyle Clark calling us, and we're back in the forefront. And then I get to answer to that, right? That's me. Yes, maybe I get to fire somebody, but then I have to answer for why this happened and that happened. Those kind of things keep me up. And the things I can't control, which is weird, because I do a good job of making sure that I control the things I can control and not worrying too much about the auxiliary things. But it's certain things that I can't control that I worry about.
You think your family gets tired of you being this local celebrity of everybody knows you in the city, and it's like, do you eat outside of Brighton just so you can get some peace?
Man,
because those glasses, man. I mean,
honestly,
we see you coming.
That's why I wear sunglasses and a hat to King Soopers.
Sunglasses at night.
Exactly. That song was written for me. I intentionally participate in our economic development because it pays my paycheck, right?
Sure,
so
there's an obligation there.
We eat out in Brighton. We shop in Brighton. I spend my tax dollars in Brighton, but there is a point to where you have to separate. I love my community, and I wake up and go to sleep consuming everything Brighton in my community, but you have to also know how to cut that off too. And I learned that.
How do you do that in public places? You just walk the other way, or hide in the bathroom?
Or you know when to go to certain places, or you don't go, right? Like if I want to have a night out, I'm not going to go to the bars in Brighton. And I probably shouldn't do that. I probably should go somewhere else to where I feel like I can have a good time without having to talk to people about politics, or without somebody judging me, or that kind of thing. So you learn how to manage.
So it does affect your lifestyle a little bit. Yeah.
And I know that I can't do certain things in my community, right? And I even think about the kids too. I'm like, hey, maybe don't go to Brighton if you're going to do this, don't go to Brighton, right? Or my kids are in Brighton schools, or went to Brighton schools, right? And so I always have to think about that. Like, please don't do anything stupid, because we have a reputation. And if for some reason that gets affected, that actually can affect me, right? If city managers have lost their jobs because of things their kids have done, it's a reputation thing. It's really weird.
Sure.
But it happens, right? So yeah, there's an effect. I don't think it hinders anything that my family does. Maybe it pisses the kids off because they can't be bad in school.
Right.
But short of that, no.
Go under the radar. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Being in a metropolitan city is nice, right? Being in the metropolitan area is nice, because I can go to any city in 10 minutes, in 15 minutes. I can be in Brighton, Thornton, in Westminster, in Denver, and Aurora quickly. So being able to have access to those outlets is nice. I couldn't imagine being a city manager in like a small remote town where you're landlocked. It would drive me insane, because everything that you do is right on Front Street. You can't move away from that.
Wow.
That's a difficult place to be. I couldn't do it. God bless those people. I had lunch with a town manager, because they're towns, right? Small towns. Recently, and I
little
felt
baby towns.
Well, and some people love this stuff. They love being like the small town manager. That's just their career path. And this guy went from a small town to another small town, and I had lunch with him recently. You feel bad for people at certain points. You're like, why do that? There's so many cool opportunities.
Yeah, because you're probably like multiple roles. Like you're the town manager, you're the chief of police, you're the mayor.
You're 30 employees, including police. I have 140 people in our police department. I have 80 plus sworn officers. So we have more sworn officers than that guy has officers and fire and water people and parks.
So you get called whenever there's like an emergency?
Mm-hmm.
So you're aware of what's going on throughout the city?
Mm-hmm. All the time.
That's stressful.
That's the thing that I think makes my family the most frustrated is the amount of time that sometimes I have to take away from family time to answer a phone call from the mayor or the chief of police or, deal with an incident that happens on a Saturday or a Sunday. That's a difficult thing, but I think they understand that sacrifice though. They know that that's a part of the job, and I've signed up for this, and I hate to say it, but I signed them up for it too. And they've recognized that. I don't think they like it, but I've done a really good job. At least I think I've done a good job more recently of making sure that my council knows, hey, Saturdays and Sundays are for the family. Unless it's a real emergency, please respect that. And I think my staff knows that too. And I respect them too. I won't call a member of my staff on a Saturday and Sunday unless there's something really bad. Same with my police chief. And he respects my time too. But if I see a call from the police chief on a Saturday,
something
bad.
Yeah.
We've come to a good agreement as a city, and I think that's good. And so I think the family is starting to be a little more happy because of that, but it's a demanding thing.
Did that take a long time to get to that point?
Yeah. Yeah. There's still some council members who don't agree with it, but
like you're on the city payroll, you're going to do
the
what
manager
the city
of
needs.
the city, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, when I have a problem with my water bill on a Sunday afternoon,
oh geez, I'm not thinking about water
you're
bills.
taking the phone call, and so
gosh,
they're getting better.
Okay,
it's getting better. And
that's part of changing the culture, right?
That's part of changing the culture. But it's not just me. This is a perpetual thing in every city. Yeah. Just because you've become elected into a position doesn't mean you know everything there is to know about, being a person making a policy decision. Think about this, right? Like a city like Brighton, our budget's somewhere between $200 and $300 million. You have car salesman who runs for office. Just because that day that you're elected means that you're in the seat doesn't mean you know what you're doing, right? And sometimes they think, they have a perception, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this is what I'm going to be doing versus this is what we're actually supposed to do. The perception and reality don't necessarily line up, and there's a learning curve for that.
Yeah.
It takes a while.
Yeah.
Because they've never managed a $200 million budget, right? They've never had to manage an executive or a person who oversees an entire staff or a city that's growing. They don't know what to do.
Right. They just sell cars.
He sold cars. Right. And here he is now.
Not like you would tell him how to sell a car. So
right, exactly.
So it's interesting.
The elected official thing is an interesting, but God bless them. They care enough about their community to participate. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my career path, and that's my optimism, and that's where I'm at. And so, tying it back to the optimism moving forward thing, I really do. If I chose to focus on the negative things as a city manager, we never would have gotten the things we've gotten done, because I would have always been spinning my wheels about why haven't we done these things? Why haven't we done these things? We need to fix the why. I don't even care about the why anymore. I know I have a problem to solve. Let's solve it. The why maybe is important, but the process to get there is more important to me. Let's find a way to do it. And that's optimism, right? Finding a way. And I think that goes back to the goal setting conversation. Find a way to do the little things, and you'll get there.
Sounds cliche though.
Why?
Because everybody says it, and it doesn't have meaning.
But can you do it though?
Well, that's another thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say it, but if you practice and application, again, are very different. And I think that's a trait of mine is if I say that this is something I'm going to do, I've charted that. I'm going to find a way. That's a big part of my success is just being able to navigate. And that goes back to the goal setting too. If I can find a way to navigate myself to a place where I can achieve that goal, then that's success, right? But again, sometimes finding a place to get to that goal, and you get to a point where you're like, all right, this is stupid. You have to pivot. You can't think about it as a failure. You just have to think about it as a pivot point. And that's where people get hung up on. Like, I feel like I have failed because I haven't succeeded in being X, right? Or I wanted to start this business and I didn't succeed in starting this business, so I've failed there. No, there are other things that you have done successfully. You've just pivoted. You've now pivoted to something different. Take that and move forward with it.
Well, we'll wrap it up with this. What's one word, if you can encapsulate everything you've done with the city of Brighton in one word that you'd want to be remembered by?
Progress.
Progress.
Yeah. And I think, and the reason why I say that is because we hadn't, as a city, had a lot of progress in so many areas, whether it was organizational development, whether it was politically, whether it was development related, for so long. And I think the one thing I've allowed, or I've helped to facilitate, is the progress of the city. It's right. We're building a new water treatment plant. We're going from a 10 million gallon per day water treatment plant to a 20. We, over time, have built our tax base up into something that nobody ever thought would happen. That's progress, right? We've progressively built a city that we can be proud of. And I think that once I leave this city, hopefully people recognize that, man, that was a lot of progress. They accomplished a lot. And I feel most proud about that. I know that that's going to help. That's what keeps me, that the 3 hours I get of sleep a night. That's the reason why I can do that, is because I'll refocus on that. But honestly, I think I'm most proud of that progress. And I think that's that one word that I would go with.
Right on, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Right.
Now, when is our next podcast? What are we talking about? The Diddy effect? Is that next?
No, this is a family-friendly
Oh.
podcast that's G-rated, so we won't be covering that.
You're gonna have to bleep out a lot of my cursing then. Actually, I did pretty good. I almost said a few words.
Yeah, good job.
I kept myself clean for the G-rated.
I appreciate that.
Yes,
I could play this for my
family
kids.
Audience.
Yeah, my 7-year-old.
Hope it's inspirational to them.
All right.